We're here to decode the principles of influence. This is where we expose the psychological truths that nobody ever teaches you.
You like to believe you're in the driver's seat, that you navigate the world with independent judgment. But the truth is, every single day, you're subject to a kind of automatic, mindless compliance, a willingness to just say yes without even thinking first. And look, these aren't random moments. They're triggered, set off by a set of universal principles, weapons of influence, really, that operate just beneath your conscious awareness. And the first one? Well, it's the one you're going to fight the hardest to deny.
The first truth is always the hardest to accept. You think of yourself as a unique individual forging your own path. But your brain? It's hardwired for conformity. Now, this isn't a weakness. It's an ancient survival strategy, a fixed action pattern that kept our ancestors safe inside the herd. The problem is, in our modern world, that same instinct is being exploited every single day. This is the principle of social proof. So what is social proof? Well, think of it as a mental shortcut. Your brain is just bombarded with information, right? So to save energy, it makes a simple assumption. If a lot of people are doing something, it must be the correct thing to do. This becomes most powerful whenever you feel uncertain or when a situation is ambiguous. You immediately look outside yourself for evidence of how to behave.
And this is where the illusion shatters. You tell yourself, I am a unique individual. But the unspoken rule, the one running in the background, is that you are wired to conform. You say, I make my own choices. But let's be honest, the moment you're unsure, you look to others for the correct action. And while you believe you trust your own judgment, what you're really doing is offloading the burden of risk assessment onto the collective. You're letting the crowd's actions tell you what is safe and what is valid.
You have to understand this. The most powerful people out there don't fight this principle. No, they engineer it. They don't waste time trying to convince you individually. They just create the appearance of a consensus. They literally manufacture the herd, knowing you're programmed to follow it. It's why they label things best-selling or fastest-growing, because they know the crowd is way more persuasive than any argument they could ever make.
All right, here's the second brutal truth. Your deference to authority? It isn't based on some rational assessment of expertise. Not at all. It's a reflex, an automatic response triggered not by substance but by symbols.
This principle is just another one of those mental shortcuts. I mean, complying with experts is usually pretty efficient, but your brain has a fatal flaw. It can't always distinguish between true authority and just the appearance of it. And that creates a massive vulnerability, one that can be, and is, exploited daily.
You believe you respect genuine expertise, but the unspoken rule is that you defer to symbols, titles, clothes, and trappings. You think you critically analyze commands, but you've been conditioned since birth, by parents, by teachers, by the entire system, to obey authority figures without question. You're confident you can tell an expert from an actor, but your brain often responds blindly to the right uniform or an expensive suit before you even have a chance to think.
So the first symbol is the title, doctor, professor, CEO. The title alone is often enough to trigger your compliance, completely bypassing critical thought. It manufactures credibility out of thin air before a single word is even spoken.
The second symbol, clothing. A uniform, a lab coat, a well-tailored business suit. These aren't just garments. They are costumes that signal power and trigger obedience. They're visual triggers that our brains are programmed to obey, often without our conscious consent.
And the third symbol? Trappings. You know, all those status markers? Luxury cars, expensive jewelry, high-end electronics. They signal success and power, and we are conditioned to just defer to the people who possess them. These are not accessories. They're absolute weapons of influence.
This third principle preys on a fundamental flaw in your psychology. Your desire is not a rational calculation of value. It's an irrational response to limitation. This is the powerful principle of scarcity.
Scarcity taps directly into one of your most powerful psychological biases, loss aversion. The thought of losing an opportunity is psychologically way more painful than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Limited time only 2 left in stock. These are not just sales tactics, they are psychological attacks aimed right at your fear of loss.
So you tell yourself, I want this because it's valuable. The unspoken rule is, you want this because it is disappearing. You think you're making a rational purchase, but what's really happening is your fear of loss is being weaponized against you. And when you see other people competing for that scarce resource, your desire just intensifies, overriding all logic.
This right here, this reveals the core of scarcity's power.
See, newly experienced scarcity is the most potent form. Freedoms, once they're granted, will not be given up without a fight. And that intense psychological reaction is exactly what makes the scarcity principle so unbelievably powerful.
The final principle we're going to cover today completely reframes the very idea of kindness. In the world of influence, generosity is a strategy. A kind gesture is rarely just a gesture. It's a tool for creating social debt.
The mechanism is simple. Humans are wired to value equity and balance. We hate feeling indebted to others. This social rule is so powerful that when someone gives us something, we feel this overwhelming need to give something back, often of greater value, just to relieve the psychological burden of that obligation. So you see a kind gesture. The unspoken rule is that a social debt has just been created, one you are now programmed to repay. You think it's just a free sample, but it's really a tool to make you comply with a larger request later. You believe there are no strings attached, but the reality is simple. People are much more likely to say yes to those they owe. A small, uninvited gift can produce a yes to a request that you would have otherwise flat out refused.
Social proof, authority, scarcity, reciprocity. These are not just theories from a textbook. They are the invisible architecture of compliance. They are the fixed action patterns running your life on autopilot.
You now have the framework to see these patterns everywhere. In marketing, in negotiations, in your own relationships. And the choice you face now, it isn't an easy one. You can ignore this knowledge and remain vulnerable, a pawn in games you don't even know are being played. Or you can choose to become aware.
The choice is yours. Will you remain subject to the unspoken rules, or will you join the few who understand them? Subscribe and turn on notifications to continue decoding reality. Like this explainer if you've gained a new perspective. And comment below, what unspoken rule have you seen in your own life? Join the aware